The Chitrik Academy is dedicated in loving memory of Rabbi Tzvi Hirsh Chitrik.
Welcome to today's lesson. In the previous Gemara, we learned that there's a machlokes whether a person may take the law into their own hands. Today we are going to learn two brises to try to determine what is the halacha. Brisa number 1 starts from the dot over here. That's brisa number 1. And brisa number 2 starts from over here and goes until over here. In the first brisa, we're going to discuss in a case that this is Reuven's house, and someone put barrels or jugs in front of his house. So the question that Gemara asks is, what is the halacha? Is Reuven allowed to take the law into his own hands, or does he need to go to Beis Din to determine what is the halacha? Let's see the brisa. Tashma, come and listen. This is generally how brises start off. Tashma, Hamamale chatzer chaveri kadi yain v'kadi shemen. Hamamale, if a person fills his friend's chatzer chaveri, his friend's chatzer, with kadi yain, jugs of wine, v'kadi shemen, or jugs of oil, the halacha is Baal hachatzer, the owner of the courtyard, the chatzer, Meshaber v'yetze, he can break the barrels and leave his house. Meshaber v'nichnas, and break the barrels and re-enter his house. So we see from here, the Gemara says, that a person may take the law into their own hands. It says he could just go and break the barrels because it's in his way, and does not say that he needs to go to Beis Din. Now the Gemara continues and says that no, not necessarily that is what the brisa is saying, and we cannot bring a proof that a person can take the law into their own hands. Why not? Reb Nachman bar Yitzchak says, when it says Meshaber v'yetze leBeis Din, it means that if he needs to go to Beis Din, he can break his way through in order to go to Beis Din. And the same way, Meshaber v'nichnas l'haviz chayesav. What does it mean he could break his way through to go back, to re-enter his house? That means l'haviz chayesav, in order to bring his proofs that he is correct. But generally a person cannot just take the law into their own hands and break someone else's things that are blocking his way, only if it's blocking his way to go to Beis Din. So from our first brisa, we do not have a raya either way. So the answer to this is, from our first brisa, we cannot bring a proof. So the question is, can we bring a proof? The question of the Gemara was, is it a proof that a person could take the law into their own hands? And we answer, according to Rav Yitzchak, that no, it is not a proof, because it can mean that a person is only allowed to break his way out to go to Beis Din, but not necessarily in any case. Let's see the second brisa. It's by the Tashma over here where we have the number 2. Tashma, come and listen. It says, Minayin lenirtza shekala lo yamav. How do we know that a nirtza, we'll explain what that means in a minute, that his days of working as a slave have finished, shekalu lo yamav, his days have finished. V'rabbi mesarev by latzeis, and his master, his owner, the person who owns him, is urging him to leave. V'chaval, and he hit his slave, the nirtza. V'asa by chapura, and he made him a wound. Shu pater, how do I know that the rabbi, the master, will be pater? Talmud leimar, because it says, like tikchu kaifer lashuv. That's what the pasuk says, and the Gemara translates, like tikchu kaifer lashav. You do not need to pay kaifer. You do not need to collect payment. That the slave cannot collect payment lashav for someone because he is returning to his master's home. What does this mean? Let's go to our blackboard and let's go to case number 2. A nirtza is a case of a Jewish slave who, generally a Jewish slave works for his master for only 6 years. But if a slave, wants to stay longer than 6 years, he wants to stay 6+ years, then there is a concept called nirtza. The master takes the slave to Bezdin, and in Bezdin they make a hole in his ear. This white dot this is the ear, and they make a hole in his ear. And then what? He can't stay forever. He can only stay till Yovel. Yovel occurs every 50 years. So if the slave, if he wanted to stay longer, he for example joined his master in let's say the 30th year of Yovel, and he stayed for 6 years. So we'll add 6 years. So now it's the 36th year, and he did nirtza. They pierced his ear. Then he could stay until the 50th year, which is another 14 years. At the end of the 14th year, then the slave needs to go. He needs to leave his master. So our case is speaking about a slave, a nirtza, who already worked more than 6 years and had his ears pierced. And the end of the 50th year of Yovel, if he wants to stay, and the owner, his master, tells him, I don't want you to stay, and is trying to convince him to leave, but he doesn't leave, and the master hits him. So the question is he chayiv to pay the wounds, the damages that he did to the slave, or not? So that's what the Brisa says. Is he chayiv or not? And the Gemara answers, we learn from a pasuk that no, the master is not responsible to pay. What do we see from here? We see that a person, this master, is allowed to take the law into his own hands. His slave did not want to leave, and he hit him, and he will not be responsible because he was allowed to take the law into his own hands. So seemingly this brisa is a proof that a person can take the law into their own hands. Let's read that over again so we can understand it a little clearer. Tashma, come and listen. Min nayan lenirtza shekalech yamav. How do we know that a nirtza, the slave who stayed for over 50 years, till Yovel, shekalech yamav, his days of working are finished. The rabbi mesader bailates, and his master is urging him to leave. V'chavo, and he hit him. V'asa by chabura, and he made him a wound. Shehu pater, that he will be pater. Talmud Leimar, we learn from the pasuk. It says, "Leisikhu koifar lashuv," which the Gemara is translating. "Leisikhu koifar lashav." We do not have to pay for a slave who is returning. So seemingly, we have a raya from here. We have a proof that the master is not responsible because he's allowed to take the law into his own hands. So the Brisa is going to continue and say that no. We're talking about a case that the slave used to steal from his master. And because he used to steal, so if the owner would go to Bezdin, until Bezdin gets the slave to leave, he would lose money. And which we said earlier, that if the owner is going to lose money, he's allowed to take the law into his own hands according to everyone. Now the Gemara is going to ask a question. Ad v'idna loy ganav, v'hashta ganav. Is it only a new thing until now? Ad v'idna, until now, loy ganav, he didn't steal, and only now he starts stealing. What happened until now? That's the Gemara's question. Why are we only worried about him stealing now, not until now? And the Gemara answers, the answer starts over here, Ad ha'idna, until now, have meisi derabi aleh. The fear of his master was upon him. He knew that he has to remain with his master, he can't leave, and therefore he was afraid to steal. Hashta meisi emasa derabi aleh. Now, however, he does not have the fear of his master because he knows that he could leave at any time. Because it's after the 50th year, it's after Yovel, he could leave at any given time. So this is one answer why it's not a proof. Answer number one is because he's going to lose money if he goes to Bezdin. Let's write this down. Two answers why it's not a good proof. Let's choose a white color. Answer number one, because Ganva, his slave, is a thief, and if he goes to Bezdin, he's going to end up losing money because the slave's going to steal. And everyone holds it. If you lose money, you're allowed to take the law into your own hands. Now we're going to learn a second answer. Let's see. The second answer is Renach Bar Yitzchak Amar Be'eved Shemasa LeRabbi Shivcha Knanis. We know that the halacha is that if a Eved Ivri, a Jewish slave, while he's working for his master, he's allowed to have a Shivcha Knanis, he's allowed to have a slave woman who used to be a Knanis, a non-Jew, he's allowed to have her as a wife, he's allowed to marry her. However, once he goes free, he cannot marry her anymore, he cannot remain married. So until now, it was beheter. He was allowed to marry her. But now that he's free, Isura. If now that he's free, he's not allowed to marry her anymore. And therefore, it's not that he's taking the law into his own hands. He's taking the law not to save himself, but to save his Eved from doing an Avera. And this is the end of this lesson.